And welcome back to Out of the Fog. Well, all four federal leaders have been heavily campaigning across Canada, vying for your vote in the upcoming 42nd Canadian general election, which is taking place on October 19th. And along with our upcoming provincial election, it's certainly been busy, a very busy time for my next two guests. And joining me now to give us their thoughts on the federal election is the OCM's Fred Hutton and the Telegram's James McLeod. It's great to have both of you back.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
So let's start with, I guess, you know, it was until Sunday, none of the federal leaders had been present here in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Of course, Mulcair came down, Trudeau came down. We still haven't seen the other two leaders here in the province. Do you think that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians kind of felt a little bit forgotten, considering when you look at the campaign and they're almost, you know, nearing on 3/4 of the way through their campaign?
Controversial opinion here. I can't really blame them for not coming, and when you look at it on a pure electoral math point of view, it kind of makes sense. At best, there's 2 seats in Newfoundland and Labrador that are in play, St. John, South Mount Pearl, and Avalon, and you're talking about a 6-hour round trip travel time to get here just from Halifax, and so when you compare that to BC or Ontario, where you can hit 10, 15 serious competitive ridings in a single day, it's not really a mystery why they're spending all their time in Ontario, but it does play into this feeling that this entire side of the country is kind of getting left out.
Right. Fred, do you think that, you know, some people say it's really, especially here in this province, a race between the Liberals and the NDP, so are you surprised?
Not at all, actually, and if Stephen Harper didn't come at all this election, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, the most bizarre part of this whole election campaign so far has been the Chess Crosby story, which surfaced in July, in my opinion. The fact that this guy is synonymous with politics, that name at least. And then at the same time you see, you know, some of the things that have been going on with mainland candidates who have been booted out before this guy even got a shot at it. It was a little bit bizarre. For Trudeau, I guess he came this weekend and, you know, this past weekend, because Seamus's seat is up for grabs, and you know, I'm sure he would have possibly have come anyhow at one point. They do have 5 of the seats. Mulcair, well, the story was sideswiped by the word Newfie, which he's probably wishing he didn't come now. But you know, obviously that story was put in a back pocket somewhere until he did show up. But I'm not surprised. It's 7 seats. And this is so close, they need to go to where there are a lot more seats up for grabs.
On Stephen Harper, I'm surprised he didn't come before Labor Day. Because if he doesn't show up here at all, that's going to be a big deal. I mean, it's further evidence that the Conservatives basically written off Newfoundland and Labrador altogether. But my money was on him just showing up for like an hour or two somewhere, like gander without a lot of journalists to ask pesky questions, do a quick photo op with Kevin O'Brien, and then get back on the plane and back to the mainland. At this point, I'm with Fred. I think there's a decent chance he doesn't show up at all.
It was unusual this year, we should note, that not one leader came for regatta. And normally they do come down.
I know. Yeah.
Just spend the day because it's outside that sort of, but this is such a long election campaign, 10 weeks long. That may be why they didn't come. They were in election mode back then.
Well, and there was a debate right the day after Regatta Day.
Right. Fred, I want to bring up a point that you made in terms of a comment that Mulcair made. Now, this was back in 1996. A Liberal candidate brought it to everyone's attention. He used the word Newfie, and I guess not such a nice tone. He did apologize for it afterwards, but do you think that the apology was necessary?
You know, look, I hope they don't go through James' emails, my emails, or yours at some point in time, because everybody, you know, look, whatever. You look at what's happening in the States, people just seem to, there's this permanent record now, and the ability for people to search it out. This is new territory for us as well as reporters. I mean, because before you'd be in a library looking through microfiche trying to find, you know, but nowadays you're in your car waiting at a light and you can go, okay, when did Mulcair say Newfie? And you get 50 stories will pop up about it. You know, I think it was, you know, he apologized 20 years ago. He apologized now.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. James?
With the caveat that I'm a Torontonian, so this is dangerous territory. The bottom line is that we're talking about this, and we're not talking about whatever message Tom Mulcair was trying to deliver when he was here. And
but it's easier to do that, though.
Well,
it's easier to do that than figure out childcare or the deficit or the debt.
Absolutely, but that's the whole game. I mean, the Liberals don't actually think that this controversy is going to move any votes one way or the other. No. But as long as we're talking about this, we're not talking about their childcare plan. We're not talking about whether you're balancing the budget or running a deficit. It's all about just this little controversy that some people feel very strongly about.
Okay, well, we will move on because I want to know whose race is this? When you look overall and at the federal, the federal leaders, who's in this? Whose race is this to win? Is it a three-way race? Is it a two-way race?
Well, all the polls certainly indicate that. Whether or not Newfoundland is going to set the tone for what's going to happen across the country. Of course, the polls close here first, as they always do. Mm-hmm. James basically nailed it right in the first sentence. There's two seats basically up for grabs here. Kevin O'Brien would argue that maybe the central seat, he's got a shot at that. He would argue that. But, really it's the two seats on the Avalon Peninsula that are going to be up for grabs in this race. The other Liberal seats seem to be pretty safe at this point in time. There's nothing to indicate otherwise, and hearing from polling. So, but across the country, who knows? New set, where's the crystal ball?
Yeah, I mean, nationally, you can't say anything firm until after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be some sort of shifts that happen late in the campaign as people really start thinking down and making some hard choices. But in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's really St. John's, South Mount Pearl is very possibly the only competitive race. There was a poll out of Main Street Research that put the Liberals out head and shoulders in front in Avalon. We thought that, that's a messy race, and we thought that might be close, but if that poll's accurate, then the only real race is between Ryan Cleary and Seamus O'Regan. All
right, well, now that you brought that up, because of course there was a debate that was held, CBC held it a few nights ago with both Seamus and Ryan Cleary. The other two candidates did not show up, but in your opinion, James, and I know that you were watching or listening to it, how do they handle themselves? Was there a clear winner in your mind?
I'm hesitant to say winners and losers in debates, but I will say Seamus O'Regan landed some solid punches, and he spent a lot of time talking and sounding pretty sensible. But, I mean, Ryan is no slouch either, and he spent 4 years in Parliament and knows how to make a point. What was interesting to me about that debate, and it's online, I encourage people to go and watch the whole thing, because aside from the group of people in this country that are going to vote Conservative no matter what, they like Stephen Harper, he's keeping the taxes low, and that's the only thing they care about. There's this huge change voting base that is split between the Liberals and the NDP, and they're pushing back and forth, and that's why those two parties are attacking each other so much. And what was fascinating to me about this debate, it was just two very intelligent candidates who were offering two different visions for what change from Stephen Harper looks like. And in a big way, that's what this election is about.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and Fred, what are your thoughts in terms of that riding and then that race even between, I guess, Ryan Cleary and Seamus O'Regan?
I think there was a sense when Seamus first announced that he was going to run that this was going to be an easy victory because Justin Trudeau had just visited. It was like a rock star reception for Trudeau. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of when Danny Williams would go to events and, there was just, ticker tape everywhere and stuff coming out of the sky and balloons, and everybody thought, here comes Trudeau. And then, the polling, from what I'm hearing, is not showing that it's going to be that easy win for Seamus because it's a star candidate, a well-known person, from TV and well-known across the country. And plus he had a history prior to his television career. It's going to be a very interesting race to watch. I mean, one that most people in this province, the political junkies are going to be keeping a really close eye on that night. But as, who's going to win? I'll tell you an hour after the election.
Well, and that's really one where I think if Tom Mulcair or Justin Trudeau starts pulling ahead in a big way late in the race, that will tell the whole story in that riding. No disrespect to Seamus or Ryan, but I do think the national campaign and which way things are pulling will have a lot of impact on the ballot box there.
Okay, we're going to switch topics a little bit here. Still sticking with politics, but James, I know that you have some news to share, and I don't think we can leave tonight without mentioning that you have, just tell us about, I guess, a new book that will be released.
This is shaping up to be a pretty busy fall for me because in addition to the federal election and then the provincial election, I'm most of the way through writing a book about Newfoundland politics in the last couple of years, which I didn't know in September 2013 that it was going to be such a busy couple of years. But yeah, I'm trying to sort of capture everything that happened from the last days of Kathy Dunderdale being in power through Frank Coleman and Tom Marshall being in charge, and the NDP meltdown explosion thing that happened. And as soon as I know how the story ends, it'll be out.
Okay, so you're looking for a possible release in the new year?
Yeah, early in 2016, and if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be able to see where you can pre-order it.
Looking for
We're not getting free copies?
Free copies.
Are you saying we have to pre-order
I'll
this?
sign a copy for you.
Oh, okay, thanks. We got to share it, Aaron.
Yes, indeed. I know. You can read it first, and then you can hand it off. No, but congratulations. And just wondering, obviously talking a lot about politics, a bit of humor in there. And I ask that because you seem to introduce that in a lot of your tweets.
Well, I think the thing that people miss from politics a lot of the time is how human and silly it is. I mean, these are people who get things wrong and do things for reasons that are not fully thought out. And when you're following it up close, especially what's happening sort of outside the camera shot, can be really kind of ridiculous. And I try to sort of focus on that a little bit, These are real people who are trying to run things, and sometimes
it is kind of different the way that, because it's such a small community here, relatively speaking, when the politicians walk up before the cameras roll and before the recorders are on, there's a lot of sort of, hey, how you doing, and all this, and a bit of fun, and is my tie straight, or how am I, and then they turn it on. Yeah. But then then when it's done, the cameras are off. Then there's nice
I guess
to
from
see
our perspective,
yeah,
it's
sure.
interesting to see that
part
and the
of it you
actual
don't see, I guess.
personalities.
Cabinet minister swearing like a sailor about the weather right before he goes on camera, stuff like that.
So there might be a few secrets
Oh my God.
let out.
And that's not to say what the reporters have said.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you very much for joining us. Of course, our first political chat of the season, and of course, we'll see you again in another couple of weeks.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Okay. Well, folks, we're going to take a very short break. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can contact us by emailing outofthefog@rci.rogers.com, or you can call 757-9600. We'll be right back. Stay with us.